So please welcome on stage, Kristo Käärmann.
Thanks.
Banks take a massive £50 out of every 1,000 you transfer abroad. But why? They convert your money using an unfair exchange rate and charge you a huge fee to transfer it. Sometimes they even claim there's no fee, but guess what? Yup, you still get stung on the exchange rate. All in all, it's more profits for them and nasty hidden fees for you. So what's the solution? Tempting, but a little extreme. Say hello to Transferwise, the clever new way to transfer money between countries. Now you can beat the old bank system and wave bye-bye to hidden fees forever. Transferwise works in a totally new way. Think of it a bit like Skype, but for money instead of calls. Making a transfer takes just a few minutes. Your money gets converted at the real exchange rate, and the fees are up to 10 times lower than what your bank really charges. It's guaranteed to arrive quickly, securely, and the system's fully regulated by the FCA. Problem solved. So next time you transfer money, transfer wise.
Thank you, guys. I didn't quite realize it's going to look like starting with an advert, you know, like starting a good film you have to watch through a little bit of advertising. But I just hope that helps to explain what we do. So as Philip already introduced, we're actually one of the seed-cam companies, and we started not so long time ago, just 2 years. So I'm here today to tell you a little bit about what that story really, what that journey looks like, being a startup with first a very almost an unreal idea that we could take over banks, so we could take over a product that the banks have been running for hundreds of years and do it ourselves, do it in a technical way online as a startup would. So I'm not going to talk about, if this is, usually these conferences have lots of startups, lots of VCs in the place, everyone interested about fundraising. I'm not going to talk about the fundraising at all. I'm going to talk about how to take a challenge and how to build a company, and you can be sure that the money will find you. That's not going to be a problem. So, starting off, we think we know quite well what computing is going to look like because it's advanced so quickly over the last few years. And probably in 2020 we're going to wear computing on our skin, under our skin. It's moved on massively over the last couple of decades. Also, we've taken on industries where they look completely new after what happened on the internet. So we can be pretty sure that that newspapers are really something that the hipsters read on the Sunday because everyone else is getting their news online on their mobile. We're making retro items. However, the question is, what is money going to look like in 2020? Is it something like this? When we look back then over maybe the last 10 years, there are only a couple of things that have happened in the money space, a couple of bold ideas. So I think the only financial startup that's really made it widely and globally is PayPal. Since PayPal, we've had Square and iZettle and the companies that allow to take money on your mobile. We've learned how to take payments online with Braintrees and others. But there's no massive change like we've had in music, in news, in computing, in sports. So this has never come to banking. Banks still look like this. I took this picture a couple of weeks back in Ljubljana. There are a couple of interesting things are happening. So I don't know. Some people are thinking that in 2020 we will have bitcoins on our rings, and that we could pay with touching our rings with each other. I'm very excited by these ideas. Bankers are generally not. Regulators and governments are generally not. So it is going to be incredibly hard for people like us in the auditorium to take on banking. But what I want to tell you today is that it's definitely worth it. And for a couple of reasons. So first of all, banking is already a tech business. There's nothing other than that in banks. It's just technology. They take the money in, they keep it, they calculate the risk, and then they send the money out in the other end. Banks are no less tech businesses than Google or Facebook. The other thing one of the reasons why we have so few startups in banking is that it's perceived as a very hard challenge. So what we've learned in the last couple of years, and that was our initial hypothesis, is that it's actually not hard, it's just complicated. So for startups usually like hard problems, like mathematically hard problems. But they try to sort of go around the complicated ones. So banking is definitely the one that is not necessarily so hard, but just complicating. There's lots and lots of stuff to do. Now, talking about the opportunity, Bank of France calculated that we spend 1% of our GDP on making payments. So 1% of the GDP, the world's GDP, is spent on making payments. So if making payments was free, like it would be, say, with Bitcoin, everyone in the world would get 2 days free every year because they wouldn't have to go to work. Because that's how much life would be cheaper. That's what 1% of GDP means. 2 extra holidays every year for everyone in the world. So the opportunity is there. The opportunity is massive. The cost that we usually unknowingly bear in running the banking sector is very, very high. And I do hope that we will have more people from this audience and from this conference who are going to try to change this. And today, well, it's been so for the last 5 years, so it's getting an old statement. It's the right time to do so. No one really likes banks. They're very, it's very, very easy to convince customers that that they're being ripped off because we've felt it so strongly over the last 5 years. So today is the right time. So let me spend the next couple of minutes just explaining how we came about with Transferwise. We had a problem that we felt maybe more immediately and urgently than others. So the way to change money abroad, to send money abroad in a different country, in different currency, usually means something like that. You log on to your internet bank, and you press a button that says send money abroad. If you're lucky, because in Western Europe, a lot of people still have to go to their bank branch physically to do that, even in 2013. So the problem is still there, even if you can do it online. In London, it costs about 20 euros to make an international payment. But what you don't realize is that, depending on the currency, the real fees in the currency exchange. So imagine if you're sending your salary abroad or paying an invoice. So if you're sending a salary abroad, you pay about 5% for moving the money to the bank immediately. So 5% of your salary just goes to the bank. The same if you're paying invoices for stuff or services abroad. Basically, you're paying 5% more than you should. And there are problems. So I'm sure every one of you who's made a transfer somewhere using your bank, it takes long. You don't really know whether the money is going to get there, and sometimes it doesn't. So we found out a way how to do it without the banks. So you don't have to go to your bank and get ripped off on a currency exchange rate. We actually have these currencies among us. So every time I want to send money to my friends in Austria, there are people elsewhere in Austria sending money to the UK. So why don't we just use these flows and exchange money between people without going to the banks? So that was a pretty wild idea back in 2011. We launched it in January, and the number that we're so proud of today with the entire team is that we've saved about $15 million in banking fees for our customers. We used to do something very similar offline with our friends, so we just exchanged money between each other, and we saved maybe about a few £1,000s offline with our friends, just doing that as a hobby. But now that we've built this service for our customers, we've saved $50 million for them in banking fees. And every time I put it on a slide, I put the number of Porsche cars that you can buy for that the bankers didn't buy. So I think we're getting to 30 very expensive, very nice little cars that unfortunately are not going to be owned by the bankers. In order to make this happen, we joined Seed Camp in 2011. And if you want to catch me later, I can tell you the real stories about that. And they're much more fun than what usually gets talked about publicly. We raised money. We raised $7.3 million from Peter Thiel, Index Ventures, IA Ventures in New York. So someone asked me just now, how did we get money from Peter Thiel? We were their first European investment, and I think it's very easy. If you have the right challenge, if you have the right business, money will find you. We shouldn't spend too much time fundraising, because if you have the right challenge and if you have the right team, you will be funded. And guys like Peter Thiel, they love going around the establishment. With their libertarian views, they will find you. So our objective is to make a huge, ineffective, inefficient industry into a smaller one. I think I'm stealing this from the guy who founded MySQL. So we want to take a $1,000 billion industry and make it into $10 billion, and hopefully we're going to have 1 or 2 billions of that 10 billion if we're successful. So for the remaining couple of minutes, I just wanted to share a couple of thoughts with you, with the ones amongst you who are going to start a financial service online. There are a couple of specific lessons just for new banking disruptors. So first of all, earning trust is possible. We didn't know that when we started. We had no idea. When we launched in 2011 with a blog post in TechCrunch, we had no idea if this is going to fly, and all of a sudden people started sending us money. We had, 15 minutes later, someone sent us 2,000 euros onto our Eurobank account, and then bang, we had £1,000 coming in the UK. And it sort of started growing. We thought, people really trust something online. With 2 Estonian guys say that they now have a new kind of money transfer service. People believe that and they trust that. And they're willing to try out new things. So it is possible, but it's very, very hard. You get the early adopters, but then how do you really build the trust and expand the trust? That is the trickiest part in building a financial services company. But delighting your customers, how are we a better bank than the guy next to us? So you have to delight your customer and know that the recommendation that someone makes is you use the service, especially in that trust business, is about 10 times more likely to convert than hitting them with funny adverts or videos on the internet. The second lesson that we learned, and people often ask us, aren't we afraid? We stand up here quite boldly and we talk about how we're going to break banking. Of course, banking is a massive industry, and with money you can do whatever you like. So are we not afraid? Yeah, we're conscious of that, but there's something that's on our side, and we've seen so well that as long as you have the speed with you as a startup, it's very hard to kill you. It's very, very hard to kill you. So don't lose your speed once you start growing, once you've been through your seed camps and accelerators and you raise money. You just have to keep speed. That's what's gonna make it happen for you. So finally, a checklist of, I'm sitting in the audience. I want to start a new bank. I want to start peer-to-peer lending. I want to start a Bitcoin business. I want to start making it cheaper for merchants to get paid. You have to come up with something that's much better than you have today. We cut the average fees by 10 times, and we moved the speed of... You saw that already. So coming to the last one, you have to have fun. So however you're going to start your business, you got to have fun. So this is our advertising in the bus stops in London. And the reason it's in the bus stops, so we first wanted to put it on the tube, but the London transport officials said that it's not possible. So it went up on bus stops, but it's still quite a lot of fun. Be bold and have fun. That's the summary of that. Anything is possible. Take a challenge, and success will find you. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions?
Yes, please.
All right, we have some time for some questions. Can we show in Slido if there are questions there, please?
I have to come back to Bitcoins. Isn't this an issue for you? One of the big advantages of Bitcoin is that there are no or very few transaction costs, and it goes very fast.
That's a very good question. So, of course, if everyone in the world started using Bitcoins tomorrow, we would be out of business. That's true. I mean, to be honest, I would still very much love us to move towards Bitcoin. So first of all, of course, we'd get to exchange all the currencies to Bitcoins to begin with, and that would be a huge business. But I would love people to start, the world to move to a more digital currency, more efficient currency.
One more question
It's
over
just
here.
a matter of time.
Yeah, works.
Yeah. Sveto Stefan of 3TS Capital. Quick question about regulations. I mean, generally what you guys are doing, I have followed a little bit this space. For example, between France and Switzerland, there is a famous precedent that more or less like every wealthy Frenchman doesn't have any money in France, but it sits somewhere in a bank in Geneva, and they're trying to do these currency swaps, but officially that actually is a money laundering. So how do you go around that? I mean, how do you circumvent the definition of a money laundering?
So that's a very good question, and we always have to explain that. So there are very clear definitions of what money laundering is, and there are a huge stack of regulations to make sure that people like us don't support money launderers and actually help to track them. So basically we have a unit dedicated to tracking down money launderers and making sure that none of those guys touch our system. It's interesting you raised Switzerland. I was at a central bankers conference last week, and we were talking about the anti-money laundering regime, etc., the rules that everyone has to adhere to in payments. And there's someone who said in confidence that, come on guys, everyone knows that if we just shut down Switzerland, we would solve the money laundering problem. How do you get the money out of your system? We use banks. So as much as we try to break banks, we have a bit of a love-hate relationship. So locally, imagine you want to send money from Vienna to London, we will be working with the local banking system in London so that we can get money into your bank account or wherever it needs to go very fast and very securely.
What will stop traditional banks from adapting or competing?
Speed. And something that we don't often realize is that when we speak about startups, then startups are a startup is one unit. They act as one. Banks are not. Banks are about 10,000 people, most of whom are coming to work in the morning only to wait for 5 o'clock so that they can go home. So the people who really have skin in the game are at the top. And looking at the problems that they have, losing a little bit of money on currency exchange, a couple of billion, they don't really care enough to compete seriously. And once they do, it's going to be too late.
Well, I would like to ask you regarding your expansion plans. At the end of the day, as far as I understood, you are doing your business in Great Britain now. The rest of Europe, are you aiming to expand your business? And I think it's quite locally regulated, this kind of business.
Yeah, so thanks for the question. We are now already in, I think, about 30 different countries. And you're right that this regulation stuff always adds overhead. It's not as easy as you put an app out and everyone starts using it. Entering a new market is tricky and it takes time. So we're in about 30 countries. We just opened up a lot of Asia, India, Singapore, Hong Kong, etc. Europe is a beautiful place because in terms of regulation, there's one thing that the European Commission has done well. It's this payment services regulation, or SEPA, as you may know it here. It basically means that the European payments market is one market. So you're a startup in Vienna, and all of a sudden you can create a service that works across the entire European Union, the entire Eurozone. You have a 600 million customers just there waiting for you. There are, of course, some tweaks around the regulations in every country, but this is a rather small issue to deal with, to get a 600 million very wealthy market behind you.
I think, can I buy an airplane with Transferwise was pretty high voted before.
Sorry, say again?
Can I buy an airplane with Transferwise?
Potentially, yes. We haven't. No one has yet. So last week, someone bought a flat in New York and transferred 2.6 million euros for that. So that was quite big. I think for 2.6 million euros, you might get a small airplane already. So I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I hope the VCs in the audience will give it a try.
We can take one more question if you want. Unless you want to tell us about the major crisis you had.
What is a major crisis in a startup business? There's sort of the organizational crisis where you have to fire someone. You have to fire your second employee or third employee. That's quite a crisis. You have crisis when you're running out of your funding and Peter Thiel hasn't called you yet. There are sort of trust-building crises. Fortunately, we managed to sort of go around this too much. So I don't have a good one to tell you, but it's always worth. So as a startup, the way that we work with it, we don't worry about risks too much as a bank normally would. We worry about terminal risks. So we worry about if something goes really, really wrong, such as losing trust with your customers.
All right. Thank you very much for sharing the Transferwise story.
Thank you.